A group of teens filmed a veteran for laughs. They didn't know Chuck Norris was watching. The lunchroom buzzed with clattering trays and animated chatter. Across the long tables, a group of teenagers huddled, eyes darting toward the far end where an older man sat alone, wearing a faded uniform jacket, its patches frayed around the edges. One boy nudged his friend and gestured subtly. A ripple of quiet laughter spread, punctuated by stifled snickers. A girl elbowed her companion, and together they rolled their eyes, making exaggerated "what is that?" faces. Forks paused midair, heads turned. Someone whispered something that sounded like, "Look at that loser. Take a second to subscribe, it really helps." "Thanks." Now, back to the story. From his seat, the veteran kept his gaze on the half-full tray before him. A simple meal of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. His hands, slightly scarred and steady, moved deliberately, cutting, lifting, eating. He didn't glance toward the table of mockers, though he heard them. Resistant to the urge to rise and leave, he held his ground, dining with dignity despite each snide remark. Nearby stood a tall, unassuming figure in plain clothes. Chuck Norris, his expression calm but watchful. He noted the sideways glances, the pointing fingers, the whispers growing louder until even those at adjacent tables leveled curious looks. When a boy leaned forward, laughter slipping out, Chuck's gaze sharpened. He didn't intervene yet. He allowed the moment to unfold, to let the ridicule reveal itself in full. A couple of seats away, a lone teenager, not part of the mocking circle, watched with unease, but chose silence, torn between sympathy and peer pressure. The cafeteria lights hummed overhead, and the veteran lifted his eyes briefly, not in challenge, but in quiet acceptance of the moment's sting. Unseen by the taunting group, a tremor passed through the air, a stillness before something changed. And somewhere in the midst of clipped laughter, a lesson was about to begin. He stood at the edge of the courtyard later that afternoon, the sun slanting low and painting the bricks in warm gold. His jacket hung on him like a relic from another world, patches frayed, colors faded, edges tattered. Yet in his posture, straight-backed, shoulders squared, it seemed as honorable as polished dress blues. His eyes, though, shone with an unexpected spark, alert, alive, tracing the laughter of the same teenagers from the cafeteria. They lounged near the basketball courts, their voices carrying snippets of taunt, veteran, reduced to a punchline. But his gaze held no bitterness. Instead, there was an unspoken story swirling in those bright irises. Battles fought, comrades lost, moments that demanded more courage than mortar shells. A breeze lifted a loose thread on his sleeve, curling it like a question mark. He touched it gently, as if acknowledging the fragility of time stitched into every fiber. Around him, the campus moved on. Students jostled for position. Sneakers squeaked on concrete. Distant cheers followed the bounce of a ball. Yet he remained an island of calm, his presence a silent reminder of sacrifice and devotion. Unbeknownst to him, across the courtyard, Chuck Norris leaned against a lamppost, arms crossed, studying the scene. He observed the rich contrast between the jacket's wear and the man's unwavering dignity. Moments like this revealed character, Chuck thought, how people carry their history on their sleeve, literally and figuratively, and how the world judged them for it. The veteran reached into a pocket and withdrew a small photograph, worn at the edges. He studied it for a heartbeat. A younger version of himself flanked by two friends, all smiles beneath a sky that carried no hint of what was to come. He tucked it back and straightened, face composed, eyes still bright with purpose. In that moment, the laughter from the basketball court seemed distant, almost irrelevant. The jacket might be ragged, but the man carried more than cloth. He carried honor, memory, and a light that no mockery could dim. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, something in the air shifted, preparing the ground for the lesson that Chuck Norris knew was coming. The hallways pulsed with the end-of-day rush, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, conversations veering from homework to weekend plans. Near the row of trophy cases, the same cluster of teenagers lingered, their laughter hushed, but unmistakable as they passed back and forth a phone playing a looping video. Leaning against the lockers, the veteran watched from a distance. He didn't need to hear the words to know the tone. Each clip showcased his worn jacket, zoomed in on the frayed patches, then cut to giggling faces. "Look at his eyes. They think they're so special," one girl whispered. "Bet he's just full of stories no one wants to hear." Another snickered. "Wonder if he still does push-ups in the hallway like in the movies." He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling dusty training fields and the crackle of walkie-talkies. But he opened them again, steady and clear, refusing to let their small cruelty unhinge him. Kindness, he'd learned, often came cloaked in patience. Chuck Norris, stationed at the end of the corridor, observed the scene unfold in silence. He noticed the boy at the center of the taunts, phone held aloft, poised to capture any reaction. He saw the girl shifting her weight, eager for a reaction, and the others leaning in, hungry for confirmation of their own superiority. A teacher's distant voice called for order, but it never reached this pocket of mockery. Instead, the video continued its merry loop, the whispered insults echoing louder in the veteran's ears than any shouted taunt could. Beside him, a janitor pushed a cart of empty water bottles, oblivious to the storm of adolescent cruelty passing by. The veteran nodded a silent greeting, his eyes kind. The janitor gave a weary smile in return and moved on. Chuck Norris stepped forward slightly, the click of his boots on linoleum drawing no attention until the veteran turned and caught his gaze. In that instant, the veteran saw assurance reflected back at him, a promise that he wasn't invisible, that someone recognized the injustice of being laughed at for bearing the visible marks of service. The hallway's energy shifted, though the teens were too wrapped in their own amusement to notice. Their whispered insults carried on, but now they existed under the weight of an unseen presence, one that would soon remind them how hollow mockery could be in the face of real strength. He found a quiet corner of the library after class, settling into an armchair beneath a tall window, filtered by afternoon light. His backpack lay at his feet, straps loosened, and he unfolded a well-worn notebook filled with journal entries from nights in barracks and field operations. Around him, students flipped pages of textbooks, tapped on laptops, and whispered study questions. No one paid him much mind, except for a few passing glances from younger cadets who recognized a mentor in their midst. He ignored them too, preferring solitude. His fingers traced the embossed emblem on the front of his jacket, as if drawing strength from the faded stitching. He projected calm, even as the echo of yesterday's laughter lingered. Inwardly, he repeated a mantra he'd learned in training. Stand firm, breathe steady, move forward. A stack of reference books teetered on a nearby table. He rose, gathered them, and carried them to a study corral. Each book he placed down with deliberate care. Military history, strategy, leadership. He opened the first to a bookmarked page and let his mind drift into the margins of others' experiences. Tactics born of necessity, courage tested by fire. An hour passed. His pen scratched quietly across paper as he composed thoughts on resilience and respect. He didn't write about the students' mockery or the video, but about principles. Honor before comfort, service before self, compassion over disdain. When footsteps approached, he looked up to see a librarian pushing a cart. She paused at his table, offering a polite nod and a fresh stack of new titles she thought might interest him. Biographies of notable veterans, memoirs of wartime nurses, essays on the cost of freedom. He thanked her softly, his voice measured, his eyes expressing gratitude despite the fatigue around them. As she moved on, he closed the notebook and snapped it shut with resolve. His shoulders squared, the frayed jacket sleeves falling into place as symbols of perseverance, not pity. He collected his books and stood, glancing once more at the window's golden light. Stepping away from the quiet sanctuary, he carried with him a silent promise: to meet mockery with dignity, to transform whispers into lessons, and to let his unwavering resolve speak louder than their laughter. He returned to the courtyard at dawn the next morning, the air crisp with possibility. The veteran stood beneath a lone oak tree, feet planted shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind his back. His jacket, buttoned tight against the breeze, bore the weight of stories no one overheard. A small crowd had gathered by the basketball courts. The same teenagers, faces flushed with early practice, balls thudding against asphalt. They paused mid-dribble when they saw him, but curiosity outweighed nerves. He raised a hand in greeting, nodding once with respect before lowering it to his side. Without a word, he stepped forward and took position before the makeshift court line, facing them squarely. His stance was simple but unyielding, chin up, spine straight, shoulders back. The light caught the subtle scars on his hands, the lines around his eyes, and the faint promise of strength in his posture. The teens exchanged confused glances. One of them, shirt stained with sweat, leaned forward and asked, "What are you doing out here?" His tone held challenge, though the question trembled between defiance and fascination. The veteran didn't answer immediately. He looked at each face in turn. The boy with the phone, the girl with crossed arms, the others shifting uncomfortably. Then he pointed to the frayed patch on his sleeve and nodded toward it. His quiet gaze invited them to ask more, to look beyond appearances. A hush fell. The only sound was the distant squeak of sneakers and a single basketball bouncing. Finally, the boy with the ball, who had led the mocking, rolled it toward the veteran's feet. It hit his shoe softly. The crowd held its breath. The veteran smiled, subtle but genuine. He bent, picked up the ball, and stood. Then he tossed it back with measured strength, an arc that landed precisely in the boy's hands. Shock flitted across the teen's face. He dribbled once, twice, uncertain. In that moment, the veteran's stance spoke volumes. He stood not to intimidate, but to connect, to bridge the gap between their world and his. No lecture was needed. His presence, steady and open, offered a new perspective. The teens watched, caught between respect and wonder, as the veteran held his ground, waiting patiently for the lesson they hadn't realized they were about to learn. From a shaded bench near the court's edge, Chuck Norris watched intently. His arms rested loosely on his knees, posture relaxed yet alert. The morning light cast long shadows across the asphalt, but his gaze remained fixed on the veteran, standing firm. Chuck noted the veteran's quiet authority, how he commanded attention without raising his voice, how each deliberate movement radiated confidence forged in hardship. The teens, once brimming with mockery, now orbited him with cautious respect. Their postures shifted, shoulders less tense, eyes meeting his without flinching. A basketball arced through the air, and Chuck saw the veteran catch and return it with purpose. He recognized that same precision from his own training, the silent dialogue between mind and body. In that moment, Chuck understood the lesson would take root deeper than any words he might speak. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly as he caught a flicker of doubt cross one boy's face, the one who had first heckled the veteran. Chuck's lips curved into a knowing half-smile. He remembered that look from countless students and trainees, the moment conscience collided with arrogance. Chuck's presence was invisible to most, another face in the gathering, yet impossible to ignore. He wore plain jeans and a simple shirt, nothing hinting at the legend behind him. But legends had a way of lending weight to quiet moments, and Chuck's silent endorsement bolstered the veteran more than a crowd's applause. He straightened, rising from the bench, not to intervene but to stand as a guardian of respect. His watchful gaze swept across the teens again. He saw one girl's hand unclench, a boy's shoulders relax, another's eyes soften. Change was unfolding not through force, but through example. Chuck stepped back, letting the courtyard's stillness speak. He trusted the veteran to guide the moment's end. No dramatic entrance was needed. Sometimes the most powerful lessons came from simply being seen and supported. As he settled back onto the bench, Chuck allowed himself a small nod of approval. The veteran's stance and the teens' shifting attitudes were proof enough that dignity and strength, when displayed with humility, could reshape hearts and minds far more effectively than any lecture Chuck could deliver himself. Late that afternoon, the veteran found himself alone by the far hoop, the court empty except for the fading echo of bouncing balls. He dribbled once, then twice, eyes scanning the empty expanse as if looking for something beyond the game. Footsteps approached, measured, confident. He turned to see the boy who'd led the mocking circle, ball tucked under one arm, jaw set. The teen's expression held a new seriousness, a mixture of respect and unresolved pride. Without a word, the boy bounced the ball twice and paused, meeting the veteran's gaze. Then he raised an eyebrow and tossed the ball against the backboard. The solid thunk carried an unspoken question. "Do you accept?" The veteran considered the court, the dying light, then nodded once. He stepped forward, positioning himself at the free throw line. The boy moved to the three-point arc, bouncing the ball in rhythm with his heartbeat. A hush settled as the sun dipped lower, the sky streaked with orange. The veteran caught the next pass, pivoted, and shot. The ball swept through the net, swift and true. The boy's eyes widened. Now was his turn. He dribbled hard, drove forward, and missed. The rim rattled the reminder that skill alone wasn't enough. The veteran retrieved the rebound, offered the ball back, and nodded encouragingly. In that challenge, something shifted. The court became a place of mutual trial, not mockery. As twilight settled, the veteran's quiet acceptance of the game spoke louder than any taunt could, inviting the boy to learn rather than ridicule, to rise to the challenge rather than hide behind insults. The next morning, the veteran returned to find the court already occupied. The same group of teenagers leaned against the fence, arms crossed, smirking. One held his phone ready, and another snickered as soon as they saw him approach. "Don't trip on your shoelaces, Grandpa," one boy jeered, voice loud enough for others to hear. A girl chimed in, "Bet he still thinks they'll hand out medals for shooting free throws." Their laughter rose in waves, mingling with the echo of a ball skidding across concrete. He paused at the edge of the court, taking in the scene. Their laughter wasn't vicious, yet, but carried an edge, a test of boundaries. He remembered that feeling in the field when an enemy probed defenses, looking for the weakest point. He straightened his spine and met the boy's gaze without flinching. "Careful," he said softly. "You might learn something." His voice carried calm authority, the kind that silenced chatter in barracks and brought recruits to attention. The laughter faltered. One teen stepped forward, rolling the ball under his foot. "Oh yeah? What did you teach us?" His tone dripped with scorn, but his eyes flickered with curiosity. The veteran raised an eyebrow. "More than you expect." He reached down, picked up the ball, and spun it on his fingertip. The teens watched, intrigued despite themselves. A girl whispered to her friend, "He's so extra." "It's just basketball." Another rolled her eyes. "Yeah, like he's in a dunk on us." He let the whispers wash over him, then bounced the ball twice and shot without warning. The ball swished through the net with a crisp snap. The teens fell silent, surprise coloring their faces. Their mocking remarks had sharpened the moment into a challenge, and now, watching him stand straight and steady, they realized their words carried weight only until confronted by unshakable confidence. As the veteran retrieved the ball, the last echoes of laughter faded, leaving something unexpected in their place, the first stirrings of respect. He arrived without fanfare, stepping onto the court as the teens regrouped after the veteran's shot. Chuck Norris's presence shifted the air. No spotlight, no declaration, just an unmistakable authority. The boy with the phone straightened, the other straightening too, unsure whether to laugh or flee. Chuck walked to the center line, hands casually at his sides, eyes meeting each teenager's in turn. He offered a slight nod toward the veteran, who fell silent in mid-dribble. "Mind if I join?" Chuck's voice was quiet but carried weight. The teens exchanged nervous glances. The boy with the phone swallowed and stammered, It's your court, sir." Chuck smiled, not condescending but warm, and picked up the ball. He bounced it twice, rhythmically, like a heartbeat steadying itself. Then he passed it to the veteran with a smooth motion that spoke of countless hours spent mastering every nuance of movement. The veteran caught it and turned to face Chuck, eyes bright. He dribbled once, then passed back. Chuck caught the return and spun on his heel, arching a graceful shot that landed cleanly in the hoop. The net whispered approval. A hush settled over the teens. They'd expected spectacle, a display of force. But what they saw was grace under pressure, skill unaccompanied by arrogance. Chuck retrieved the ball and walked to the boy who'd mocked earlier, handing it to him. "Your turn," Chuck said. The boy hesitated, then dribbled forward and shot. He missed, the ball clattering against the rim. Chuck nodded, encouraging. Again, the boy shot once more, this time finding the mark. His grin was hesitant, but genuine. Chuck clapped once, softly, and stepped back. "You see," Chuck addressed the group, voice steady. "We learn respect not through ridicule, but through participation. You mocked what you didn't understand. Now you've seen what it takes to stand in another's shoes." Silence held them captive as Chuck and the veteran exchanged a glance of mutual acknowledgement. Then, without another word, Chuck walked off the court, leaving the teens to process the lesson he'd taught, that true strength invites others to rise rather than pushes them down. The next afternoon, Chuck led the veteran and the teens to an open field beyond the court, where the grass stretched in gentle waves. He handed each teen a length of rope. Their brows furrowed. This wasn't part of any game they knew. Strength, Chuck began, voice calm, is more than muscle. It's unity, trust, and purpose. Without waiting for questions, he tied his rope into a loop secured around a sturdy oak's trunk. He patted the knot. The teens shifted uneasily. One asked, "What are we doing?" Chuck smiled. "Pull." He held the other end of his rope and looked to the veteran, who tied his loop. The veteran stepped back, planted his feet, and braced. Chuck nodded to the teens. All at once, he gave a gentle tug, and the veteran held firm. Then Chuck stepped forward, leaning into the rope, muscles flexing, but not in a showy way. His body moved in harmony with the pull, inching the veteran forward a step at a time. The teens watched, curiosity replacing smirks. Then Chuck handed them a single rope looped around the same tree. "Now," he said, "all of you." They gathered, 3 on each side, their ropes converging on the tree. At Chuck's signal, they pulled together. At first, they yanked unevenly. Some leapt in, others hesitated. The rope tightened around the veteran, who felt the shifting strain but stood his ground. "Coordinate," Chuck instructed. His voice cut through the grunts and rustle of grass. 1, 2, 3, pull. This time, they heeded him, pulling in unison. The combined force surprised them all. The veteran lurched forward several feet, finally stepping free of the tree's circumference. Panting, the teens stared at one another, then at Chuck and the veteran. They'd expected a display of brute force, but instead found that strength multiplied when people acted together with respect and shared intent. Chuck unclipped his rope, nodded to the veteran, and turned to the teens. "Strength," he said, "isn't used to dominate. It's used to uplift." As the sun dipped low, the teens stood in thoughtful silence, the echo of their lesson rippling through the field like a promise of change. As the ropes fell slack and the group caught their breath, the veteran reached down to pick up a discarded football someone had left near the field's edge. He tucked it under one arm and glanced at the teens, who still stood clustered, looking at him with wide eyes. Without warning, he sprinted forward, weaving between them, dodging as if they were defensive linemen. The football cradled at his side. He dove for the makeshift goal line marked by a row of cones. His movement was fluid, every step precise, an unexpected display of agility that belied his years and the weight of his jacket. A gasp rippled through the teens. One boy stumbled backward, mouth agape. A girl's hand flew to her chest, blinking rapidly. Their assumptions cracked open. This wasn't the stooped, slow figure they'd mocked, but a seasoned athlete, honed by years of training under far harsher conditions. Chuck rose from where he'd been leaning against a fence post, nodding appreciatively. The veteran rose to his feet, football still secure, and flashed a grin. He tossed the ball back to the nearest teen, one who had snapped the first photo, and the boy fumbled as he caught it, hesitation in every muscle. "Your turn," the veteran said softly. "Show us what you've got." The teen swallowed, glancing at the cones, then launched into a tentative run. He zigged too late, tripped, and the ball bounced away. Laughter bubbled, nervous this time, lacking its earlier cruelty. The veteran jogged over, retrieved the ball, and handed it back, eyes kind. "Practice," he said. "Don't underestimate anyone, especially yourself." The teen nodded, cheeks flushed, and tried again, moving with more confidence. Around them, the group shifted, talk low and earnest. Their surprise had cracked the ice of disdain, replaced by curiosity. They asked questions. How long had he served? Where had he been stationed? The veteran answered, voice steady, weaving stories of far-off places and fierce bonds. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the teens watched him not as a relic but as a mentor. Their widened eyes reflected respect rather than mockery, a silent testament to the power of surprising strength and the lessons it could teach. The following morning, the courtyard felt different, lighter, charged with anticipation. The veteran stood by the basketball hoop. The teens gathered in a semicircle around him, their expressions open and respectful. Chuck Norris lingered nearby, silent encouragement in his posture. The veteran held the basketball and spoke plainly. Grace and strength aren't measured by size or age, but by purpose and perseverance. He invited the teens to join him in a drill, one that mirrored life's tests rather than game stats. He explained the exercise. Each would dribble to a designated spot, stop on a dime, and pass the ball back without looking. A simple task, but one requiring focus and trust. The teens nodded, exchanging uncertain glances. First up was the boy who'd filmed the video. He bounced the ball with trembling confidence, dashed forward, planted his foot with a sharp pivot, and released a blind pass. The ball drifted wide. The veteran caught it easily and handed it back. Again, he said. They repeated the drill, each time refining their steps, learning to trust muscle memory over sight. Chuck watched the transformation, stumbles replaced by sure-footed steps, frustration morphing into quiet determination. As the sun climbed, the veteran paused the drill and addressed them. In life, he said, you won't always see what's coming. You'll need to rely on preparation, on instincts you've honed, and on the support of those around you. A girl asked, voice steady, "How did you learn that?" He smiled, eyes drifting to his jacket's frayed patches. In places where the stakes are higher than a game, when you can't afford to hesitate. Chuck stepped forward then, placing a hand on the veteran's shoulder. He's right, he said. Every drill, every repetition builds trust in yourself and in your team. That's the real lesson. The teens absorbed the words, silence stretching between them. Then, one by one, they resumed the drill with renewed focus, passing and catching with growing precision. What began as a lesson in basketball had blossomed into something deeper, a lesson in resilience, trust, and respect that would reach far beyond the court. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as the veteran gathered the teens around the perimeter of the court. Their faces, once alight with skepticism, now held a quiet attentiveness. He spoke without preamble. Respect isn't a birthright. You earn it through actions, through empathy, and through standing by your convictions when it matters most. He demonstrated by kneeling to pick up a straight basketball that had rolled away, dusting it off carefully before handing it to the nearest student. Small gestures count, he said. Acknowledging others, even when they're different, means more than grand declarations. One of the boys nodded, remembering how he'd laughed at the veteran's jacket. He reached down and straightened a sagging duffel bag strap, mirroring the older man's courtesy. The veteran acknowledged the gesture with a warm smile. Next, the veteran asked the teens to pair up and share one thing they admired about the person opposite them. Murmurs arose. Your dedication, your calm, your persistence. Some voiced surprise at their own words, as if discovering kindness in themselves. Chuck watched, pride softening his usual reserve. He stepped forward and added, when you honor someone's story, you honor your own humanity. He gestured to the veteran's jacket. Every thread here represents a chapter, a struggle overcome, a lesson learned. A girl touched one of the patches, fingers tracing frayed edges. It's beautiful, she said quietly. Her classmates fell silent, then one by one voiced agreement. The veteran rose, placing a hand over his heart. Thank you, he said. Then he turned to the group. Now, show me how you'll earn respect today. They scattered, Some retrieved stray trash and tossed in a bin. Others straightened chairs at nearby benches. One student approached a younger cadet and offered pointers on shooting free throws. The courtyard, once echoing with derision, transformed into a space of collaboration and care. Chuck and the veteran stood side by side, watching the teens' quiet acts of service. No ceremony marked the moment, yet it resonated more than any fanfare. Respect had been earned, not demanded, and in that earned respect lay the true measure of strength. The next morning, a crisp wind swept through the courtyard, carrying an unexpected energy. The veteran arrived to find the teens gathered in small clusters, but their chatter was different, excited, anticipatory. He glanced at Chuck, who raised an eyebrow with a knowing half-smile. A banner fluttered between two lampposts, Veterans Appreciation Day. Under it stood a long table piled with bottled water, granola bars, and handwritten cards. The teens had organized it overnight. One approached, handing the veteran a card adorned with bright markers. "Thank you for teaching us what real strength looks like." He read the words slowly, mind tracing the loops of each letter. A warmth spread through his chest, gratitude born of genuine effort, not obligation. He looked up to see other students placing fresh flowers at the base of the oak tree where he'd first stood. A girl stepped forward, voice clear over the soft breeze. "We wanted you to know we're sorry for laughing, for ignoring you. You showed us how to stand tall. Now we stand with you." Her eyes glistened, and the others nodded, some wiping away quick tears. The veteran felt a lump in his throat. He folded the card carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you," he replied, voice thick but steady. He cleared his throat, letting silence honor the moment before speaking again. Chuck joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You changed their minds," Chuck said quietly. The veteran shook his head. They changed themselves. As the teens presented him with water and snacks, the veteran accepted each offering with a solemn nod. He addressed them, voice resonating. "Your actions today speak louder than any words. You've shown respect, kindness, and unity. Hold on to this feeling." A hush settled as he surveyed the transformed scene, once a ground of ridicule, now a space of solidarity. The sudden change, he realized, wasn't just in their behavior, but in their hearts. And as the sun broke through clouds overhead, it felt less like a new day and more like a new beginning for all of them. He sat on the edge of the stone planter, the afternoon sun painting his jacket in warm light. Around him, the teens gathered at a respectful distance, giving him space but staying close enough to share the moment. Their earlier cards and gestures had broken the ice, but no one had spoken the words they all felt. One by one, they approached with small offerings, a fresh granola bar, a bottle of water, a single flower. Each time, their eyes met his, and they offered a shy, tentative smile. The veteran accepted every gift without haste, nodding in gratitude but saying little. A boy from the mocking circle lingered last, clutching a card he hadn't dared to give before. He drew in a breath and extended it, the paper trembling in his hand. The veteran took it gently, the boy's fingers brushing his own. Their eyes locked. No words were needed. The unspoken apology passed between them in that quiet exchange. Silence settled around the group, deep and profound. The veteran placed the card beside the others, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small photograph he kept there. He showed it to the boy, himself and two comrades smiling beneath a battlefield sunset. The boy's mouth dropped open. Without a word, the veteran handed the photo over. The boy cradled it as if it were precious glass, tracing the faces with reverent fingers. Tears glinted in his eyes. In that instant, he understood more than any spoken apology could convey: the weight of sacrifice, the depth of loyalty, and the cost of earning respect. Chuck Norris stepped forward then, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. He offered the boy a respectful nod, acknowledging the courage it took to stand and make amends. The boy returned the nod, shoulders squared in newfound resolve. No formal "I'm sorry" was spoken, but the courtyard resonated with shared understanding. The veteran slipped the photo back into his pocket, his eyes soft with approval. The teens, once voices of ridicule, now stood silent protectors, guardians of respect earned. As they dispersed, some lingering for final nods, others walking away in pairs, the veteran remained seated for a moment longer, heart eased by their unspoken apology. And in the gentle hush that followed, the lesson was complete. Late that evening, the veteran stood by the court under a single floodlight, its glow pooling on the asphalt like a stage. The teens reassembled, their earlier exuberance tempered by curiosity. The veteran raised a hand, inviting focus without demand. "I've been through situations where anger felt like the only response," he began, voice calm. "It surges up, blinding you, making every moment about pain and retribution." He closed his eyes, recalling distant memories, the roar of battle, the ache of loss. But anger alone doesn't change anything. It consumes you first. One of the teens, the boy who'd led the mocking, stepped forward. His eyes held an earnest question. "What do you turn off?" The veteran reached into his jacket and produced a small whistle on a cord. He blew once, sharp and clear. "This," he said, holding it up, "reminds me to pause." He tied it around his wrist. "When I feel anger rising, I stop, breathe, and remember purpose over emotion." He demonstrated, inhaling deeply, feeling the chill of night air fill his lungs, then exhaling slowly until tension drained from his shoulders. The teens watched, arms uncrossing, breaths deepening. Next, he continued, "Seek guidance. Trust someone who's walked the path." He looked at Chuck Norris, standing tall beside him. "He taught me that strength is best guided by wisdom, not driven by fury." Chuck nodded, stepping forward to address the group. "Anger can be fuel," he said, "but fuel without direction becomes a wildfire. Channel it into discipline, into purpose, so it lights the way instead of destroying everything around you." The teens exchanged glances, absorbing the lesson. One girl raised her hand, voice small. "So anger isn't bad?" The veteran smiled. "Anger tells you something matters, but how you act on it defines your character." He handed the whistle to the leading boy. "This is yours now. Use it whenever you need to pause." The boy took it, fingers tightening around the cord. His posture straightened, as if carrying a new responsibility. Others watched respectfully, thinking of their own moments of frustration. As they dispersed into the night, no one spoke of shame or guilt. Instead, they carried a tool, a promise, to choose guidance over anger, to let purpose steady their hearts before taking action. The court, bathed in silver light, held their quiet resolve. Dawn's first light filtered through the chain-link fence as the veteran gathered the teens for one final session. His eyes, softened by the early glow, scanned their faces, now earnest, attentive, transformed. He spoke of wisdom forged in fire, how true understanding comes not from books alone, but from living through moments that test every conviction. He recounted a time when a small decision, choosing to guard a wounded comrade rather than pursue an easier path, became the defining choice of his service. The teens listened rapt. One of them, the girl who'd once sneered at his jacket, asked quietly, "How did you know it was the right choice?" He paused, searching for the words. "I felt it here," he said, placing a hand over his heart. "Purpose isn't logic or impulse. It's the voice inside that won't let you turn away when someone needs you." He invited them to stand in a circle, closing their eyes. One by one, he guided them through an exercise in inner listening, breathing in purpose, exhaling doubt, tuning into that quiet voice. As they did, the courtyard held its breath, the world outside slipping away. When they opened their eyes, their gazes carried a new depth. The leading boy spoke first. "I hear it, like a nudge to do right, even when it's hard." The veteran nodded. "That's your wisdom. Trust it." He turned to Chuck, who stepped forward and added, "Wisdom isn't owned, it's shared. When you stand for others, you strengthen your own voice." The teens exchanged glances, understanding blooming. They formed pairs and shared a moment of silence, each listening to their own inner voice before voicing one promise: to act with integrity, to stand by friends, to speak up when injustice appears. As the sun rose higher, They dispersed slowly, carrying the veteran's wisdom like a beacon in their chests. He watched them go, shoulders squared and eyes bright. Chuck clasped his shoulder and smiled. They'll remember this. The veteran looked after the teens, then back to Chuck. I think they already will. In a quiet aftermath, the veteran reclaimed his jacket, slipping it on with a gentle reverence. The patches glowed in the morning light, a testament not just to past battles, but to the wisdom earned and now passed on to a new generation. Night had fallen by the time the teens returned to their homes, but the veterans' lessons lingered like embers in their minds. In one living room, the boy who'd led the mocking sat on the couch, whistle resting on the coffee table. His mother entered, weary from work, and he offered her a glass of water without being asked, an echo of the veteran's small gestures. She looked at him, surprised, and he shrugged. Just felt like the right thing to do. Across town, the girl who had once scorned the veteran's jacket opened her bedroom door to find her younger sister struggling with homework. She knelt beside her, guiding her through fractions with patient encouragement. Her sister glanced up, grateful, and the girl realized she was the mentor now, passing on the respect and support she'd learned. In another home, a pair of friends sat at a kitchen table, textbooks open. They paused mid-study and shared a look, a silent agreement. One friend began coaching the other through a tough problem, offering calm guidance instead of teasing. The other nodded, focus sharpening as he leaned into the patient instruction. That night, each teen found themselves pausing before sleep, listening for the veteran's quiet voice. Trust purpose over anger, honor others with actions, earn respect through empathy. Some clutched the whistle he'd given them. Others fingered the frayed patch they'd taken from the veteran's jacket as a keepsake guard. Their dreams were filled with echoes of the field and court. Footsteps together, ropes pulling in unison, the veteran's steady gaze. In those dreams, they felt a connection beyond jest and challenge, a bond formed through shared trials and newfound understanding. By morning, their routines had subtly shifted, a thoughtful pause before reacting, a kindness extended without expectation, a readiness to stand up for someone in need. The veterans' wisdom had transcended the court's boundaries and settled into the fabric of their everyday lives, proof that lessons of strength and respect, once learned, could transform even the simplest moments at home. She found him seated on the back porch at dusk, cradling a mug of tea. The boy who'd filmed their first mocking video approached slowly, clutching the whistle. He hesitated before speaking, voice low. "Can I sit?" The veteran patted the bench beside him. They sat in silence for a moment, the sky shifting from amber to indigo. Crickets whispered in the grass, and the veteran took a slow sip of tea, nodding encouragement. The boy cleared his throat. I wanted to thank you," he began, eyes fixed on the whistle resting in his lap, "for giving this to me. It saved me more times than you know." The veteran set his mug down. "It's not the whistle," he said gently. "It's what it represents, pausing to choose your path. Tell me what happened." The boy exhaled, shoulders relaxing. "Yesterday, I was ready to lash out at my little brother. He messed up my project. But I remembered you said a pause. I blew this, took a breath, and talked it through instead of yelling." He offered the whistle. It worked. The veteran smiled and picked it up, examining the cord. "You own that moment. That's real strength." He handed it back. "Keep it close." The boy looked at the fading horizon. "I also wanted to say I'm sorry for how I started. I didn't understand what sacrifice meant." His voice cracked. "I still don't fully, but I want to." The veteran nodded, eyes kind. "Sacrifice isn't just what you give up. It's what you choose to protect. Family, friends, values. It's why you act, even when it's hard." They sat together as twilight deepened, sharing stories of siblings, of hopes, of fears. The boy spoke of dreams to join student council, to make school better. The veteran listened, offering gentle advice. Lead with empathy, stand firm in your convictions, and always remember to pause and reflect. When the boy rose to leave, he pressed the whistle into the veteran's hand. "I want you to keep teaching. Maybe others need this too." The veteran accepted, touched. As the boy walked into the house, the veteran watched the porch light glow warmly. In the quiet conversation's aftermath, he felt the true measure of impact, one heart changed at a time, guided by patience and understanding. He stepped into the bustling cafeteria once more, the scent of pizza and popcorn in the air. The tables were filled with students laughing, trading stories, and balancing trays piled high. Word of his return spread in murmurs. A hush followed his path as he carried a stack of laminated cards. Thank you notes he'd accepted from the teens the day before. Chuck Norris trailed a few paces behind, blending into the normalcy of midday. The veteran scanned the room, spotting the same group at their usual table, now seated with open books and water bottles instead of phones. They glanced up, hearts fluttering with anticipation. He approached and laid the stack of cards gently on the table. For you, he said, voice steady. Each card bore a simple message. Thank you for your service. You taught me kindness. I respect you. The teens exchanged shy smiles, passing cards around. Across the room, other students noticed the cards and curiosity blossomed. One boy stood, approached, and picked up a card, reading aloud. You showed me what courage looks like. A ripple of approval followed as more students joined, sharing cards and offering nods of gratitude. The veteran remained at the table, nodding in acknowledgement, accepting thanks with humility. A girl who'd never spoken earlier hesitated, then murmured, I'm sorry for staying silent when others laughed. He smiled, shook his head, and said silence can change too. Chuck stepped forward and addressed the gathering crowd. This man didn't ask for thanks, he said quietly, voice carrying across the cafeteria. He showed us how to earn respect. Students settled into an attentive hush, absorbing the weight of the moment. A teacher nearby watched, eyes shimmering, and walked over to place a hand on the veteran's shoulder. You remind us all why we honor service, she said softly. The veteran nodded and began distributing the remaining cards to anyone who wanted one. Conversations shifted from gossip to genuine appreciation. Laughter returned, warmer and kinder this time. Trays clattered less harshly. Smiles felt more sincere. As he and Chuck exited, the veteran glanced back. The cafeteria, once ground zero for mockery, had transformed into a hub of respect and gratitude, proof that lessons of honor and understanding could ripple far beyond a single table. He arrived at the school entrance shortly before first bell, spotting the teens gathered near the turnstiles. Each held a small stack of sticky notes and markers, an unexpected arsenal of goodwill. As students streamed in, the teens stepped forward, gently placing notes on backpacks and locker doors. One girl wrote, "Have a great day," and tucked it into a friend's sleeve. A boy scribbled, "You matter," and stuck it inside a younger student's textbook. Another handed a note to the custodian, thanking him for keeping the halls clean. Each act was quiet, but carried weight far beyond the paper's size. The veteran watched from a distance, arms crossed but heart warmed. He recognized the scene. Simple gestures, practiced daily, could reshape someone's outlook more profoundly than grand speeches. He noted the teen smiles as they greeted students who'd barely noticed them before. Chuck Norris joined him at the entrance, nodding in approval. "They've made kindness their mission," he said softly. Inside the school, the ripple grew. A shaken freshman found, "You're stronger than you know," on her locker and straightened her shoulders. A stressed senior discovered, one step at a time, tucked into his planner and took a deep breath. Teachers discovered notes on their desks, thanking them for choosing to teach. In the cafeteria later, the teens distributed extra snacks, granola bars, and fruit, placing them on empty seats with notes reading, "Share this with someone who needs it." Students who found the treats looked around, spotted peers without lunch, and offered half with shy grins. The veteran stepped into the lunchroom, greeting passing students who now met his nod with genuine smiles instead of sidelong glances. He felt a lump in his throat as he saw a circle of younger kids reading sticky notes aloud, laughing together over messages of encouragement. Chuck leaned in and whispered, "This is how change spreads." By afternoon, small acts of kindness had shifted the school's energy. Hallways felt friendlier, eyes met more willingly, and whispers transformed into words of uplift. The veteran paused by the courtyard, watching the teens chalk positive quotes on the pavement, each phrase a testament to respect earned and compassion shared. In those small acts, the lesson they'd learned blossomed. Kindness, like courage, grew strongest when shared, one sticky note at a time. The courtyard, usually a sea of routine, lay transformed, benches rearranged into conversation circles, chalked quotes on pathways glowing in the afternoon sun, and clusters of students deep in animated, respectful discussion. Across the scene, Chuck Norris stood beneath the oak tree, arms folded, a small, proud smile tugging at his lips. He watched as the teens who'd once held mocking phones now guided younger students through drills, basketball moves, confidence-building exercises learned from the veteran. He saw pairs hunched over notebooks, whispering encouragement, and small groups exchanging gratitude cards long after their distribution. Chuck's gaze shifted to the veteran, who moved among the students with quiet authority, offering advice, sharing stories, and resting a hand reassuringly on shoulders. Their partnership, forged in purpose, had ignited a change that reached beyond themselves. A young girl approached Chuck, eyes bright. "Thank you for teaching us to listen," she said softly. Chuck nodded, the humble hero. "The honor's mine," he replied.